The one that started it all, the first ever full-length cel-animated feature film, and the first ever by Walt Disney Productions. Following its premiere in December of 1937, this now famous fantasy adventure film broke records with an $8 million take during its initial box office run. Following plenty of re-releases and inflation adjustment, however, its $910 million gross makes it one of the top 10 most successful films in American history. Which is a fortunate outcome, as Disney himself had to mortgage his own home to help finance the film, which racked up costs totaling more than $1.5 million, a huge sum in those days. Based on the famous 1812 German fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm, this 83-minute movie has an amazing quaintness to it that honestly makes it a bit hard to criticize appropriately. Much like my comments on The Wizard of Oz, this particular gem of cinema is near impossible to separate from its fame, influence, and its status in our collective lexicon. That being said, this remains a wonderful fable for all ages, over 75 years after its release. For the small minority unfamiliar with the classic tale, the approved rated story follows the title character as she hides out in the forest with 7 mischievous and eclectic dwarfs after escaping the wrath of her wicked stepmother. Adriana Casalotti portrays the innocent and lovely princess, whose nasally voice also leads one of the picture's old-fashioned musical numbers. Meanwhile, Lucille Laverna plays a villain literally titled the Evil Queen, who lives up to her name by ordering a hit on Snow White simply for being too pretty, a truth she discovers after famously asking her omnipotent wall-hanging furniture, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" From a plot standpoint, the tiny dwarves function as a single character, but ask any kid and they'll be quick to tell you they all have very specific and unique personalities, each one characterized by their helpfully descriptive names.
Give it to him! Don't let him get away! Hold on there! It's only Dopey!
Although it's a bit choppy at times, the animation and visuals here are otherwise outstanding, especially considering when and how they were created. All of these beautiful and detailed visuals are supported by a wonderful score from Frank Churchill that flutters between ominous and frightening to playful and whimsical. Supervising director David Hand manages to assemble all of the moving pieces into a delightful, if often pointless arrangement of scenes. Indeed, a large portion of the middle of the movie is just playful antics and dancing, devoid of any real substance. But since it's rather amusing watching Dopey try to dance alongside Snow White while standing on Sneezy's shoulders, it's easy to forgive these issues. In the end, however, Snow White requires a nameless prince to save her. No one really learns any lessons or morals, and the ragged old evil queen sees a more violent and permanent ending than most Disney villains deserve. Harmless fluff that begat a lifetime of classics, when separated from its far-reaching influence and examined objectively, the movie is nothing more than an impressively accomplished children's film without a lot of rewatch value. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a classic fairy tale, imaginatively animated. Let's read some YouTube comments now to hear your thoughts. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, an 8 and a 7. Despite being frightened by it as kids, most of you really enjoyed this film and its characters, but you recognize its faults, scoring it a great. Certainly an important film, especially for breaking ground in the animation genre, but the film's simplistic story and lack of any real conflict make it an average film with a special legacy. I thought it was cool.